The comments heard on The View from a Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View from a Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from a Pew.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good night. My name is Mac McKoy, and this is the 2nd of September in the Lord's year 2025. My co-host today is Steve Aerts, and we are talking, we're continuing our conversation on one we started last week, and that was something I brought up, and it was, is atheism a mental disease? A mental, I get, not disease, what?
Malady?
Okay. Disorder.
Disorder, probably.
Yeah, disorder. That's what I want to say. And I keep running into this cord that moves your camera, so I got to quit that. All right, and so Steve is a very good writer, and after we had that conversation last week, he wrote something that I put on my Facebook page. So if you're watching this program on Facebook, go to a post that I would have posted about half hour ago, 45 minutes ago, and Steve writes like we talk. And that's why I like him as a writer. It's not fancy. We understand everything. And almost usually always his stuff is spelled correctly. Not always.
Not always.
Yeah. So Steve and I go to the same church, which is Water's Edge, and he just knows his Bible very well, and he looks at theological things from a different standpoint than I do. Not a wrong one. I don't know if there is wrong ones in theology, but he does feel differently than I do about some things, and that's one of the things that makes this show interesting. So, you start out. Do you want to read the thing that you wrote, or just leave it up there and people can go read it?
Oh, just have, you're talking about the compass?
Yeah.
Well, basically, what I did was, which way is your compass pointing? And just to ad lib it here, is basically if no matter what direction you're going, if you're pointing to Jesus, your compass is pointing the right way. A lot of times, in the secular world, if we're going north and we should be going south, we're going to be lost. Well, in the spiritual world, if we're not pointing toward Jesus, we're going to be lost. And so how does this tie into things? Well, with atheism, really not pointing too much at God at all. In fact, you're pointing away from him, denying he even exists, it's just that kind of thing. And a nihilist, doesn't believe any purpose in life. And an agnostic, he just can't believe anything either. And all these people. So then Matt challenged me last week, and he said, gosh, mental illness is an evil. And I said, no, it's not. It's, now, if you've got to be a sound mind and body, which, in his prelude, Mac alludes to, well, then I guess if you're not of sound mind, you could be evil, but I don't think it's that simple.
Okay. I'm going to back up for just a second. When God created us, he created us perfect. There was no evil that existed within us, okay? Then Satan came along and gave us sinful nature, okay? Because I don't believe God created us with sinful nature. He created us with free will, but the term free will is not in the Bible anywhere. What's in the Bible, I think like 187 times, is sinful nature. So if and you may agree or disagree with me on some of this stuff, but everything that is not of God is of sinful nature, and sinful nature comes from Satan. Would you agree with that?
Correct. If you have an absence of God, an absence of good, it only can be filled in with something that's not God then. And by its nature, since sinful nature is opposed to God, since Satan is opposed to God, a rejection of God, not that he does exist or not, he believes he exists. That's Satan knows he exists.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but he denies his forgiveness. He denies he doesn't want anything to do with him. Reason being, he wants his own autonomy and his
Right.
own power and everything. And as a writer wrote one time, I remember reading about this. He said he did accomplish that. He got his own kingdom, not one that most people would cherish, however.
Right.
So kudos to him for getting what he wanted, except who would want it. So in a sense, and not to go off subject here, but in a sense that relates to a dictator or anybody that wants to control the world, who'd want to do it anyway? I mean, for what purpose? So in other words, you're almost living in a fantasy land in a way, because is that reality? Really?
Yeah.
And so then I go from there to what you were talking about in terms of mental illness. Well, if we talk about evil being alluding to fantasy, then perhaps there's a little connection to mental illness there.
Yeah. Well, I believe the free will part of our biology is the sinful nature. You wouldn't have to wear glasses if you didn't have sinful nature. I wouldn't have a big tummy like I do. I don't believe there'd be any divorce. I don't believe would be any disease. All those things come from our sinful nature because they're not of God. And that's kind of the foundation of my belief in what we're talking about with atheism. The foundation is that anything that is not of God is evil, sinful nature.
Well, what you get into too on this whole subject is a tremendous amount of discernment. I read this, and I'm just going to read this real quick because it says it really well. A simple, though not foolproof, distinction between if something's mental illness or evil is whether the underlying distress or harmful actions stem from a medically treatable, neurological, or psychological condition, or are driven by malicious intent.
Okay. And
So-
where does that come from?
I forget where I read it, but I think it was
Oh,
under
okay.
the psychological
Okay.
psychology today maybe. To go on, clinicians consider factors like whether the behaviors are a persistent pattern, a disruption of normal functioning, or whether there's a psychological, biological explanation for one's action, rather than a spiritual or evil cause. So, as you can see, there's a lot of gray here.
Yeah. Now, I think this is going to sound silly of me to say, but I think that that's the opposite of what I believe.
Well, I think it's challenging you to rethink your position, which
Well,
could be the opposite of what you believe.
okay. Go ahead. Try to change my position.
Well, first of all, I'm not so sure that evil and mental illness are mutually exclusive.
Is it of God?
Hmm?
Is it of God?
It
Is
depends.
the evil of God?
Evil versus God would certainly be yes. But I think that you can have an oscillation between choosing good and choosing bad. Well, you can have interludes of mental illness or evil coming into one's life and how one combats it. Okay? Now, what you're referring to in terms of evil is a total discard for God permanently. I think that's what I'm hearing you saying. Is
Well,
that by
no,
definition?
no. This side of heaven will never be perfect.
Correct?
In heaven, we'll be like God created us, and that'll be perfect. Sinful nature has no business in perfection, it has no place. And I'm not making an opinion. To me, that's the fact. If you've got sinful nature, then you cannot fully follow God.
Well, let me go on with this just a little bit. I'm going to
Okay.
repeat one thing. This capsulation kind of gives an idea, at least the way the secular world looks at this. The concepts of evil and mental illness, however, are not mutually exclusive. While the lack of guilt and remorse is a key feature of certain mental health conditions, particularly antisocial personality disorder, which includes psychotherapy and psychopathy and sociopathy, assigning a label of evil involves moral judgment that goes beyond clinical diagnosis. Now, that's where you enter in. See, what you're saying is, okay, we can't always tell. And I would say that is true.
We can't always tell what.
We can't always tell whether it's evil or mental illness.
Well, okay.
For sure.
I can.
Well, you can objectively go by behavior, but we don't know what the intent is. We don't know behind the scenes. Only God knows that.
But see, that's my... Okay. I'm doing a lousy job today trying to explain this to you.
Well, you're being consistent.
If it's not of God, it's not perfect. And if it's not of God, then it's evil.
Well, we're not perfect, but we're not evil. Not rather the...
But...
I mean, not perfect is one thing, but evil is rejecting everything that's good. Everything. So we are partially, our disposition, the way we're made, as far as being of imperfect, a sinful nature, it doesn't mean that we do everything wrong or do everything right. So we are not perfect. Now, did God make us perfect or in the eyes of perfection? Does he want us to be perfect? Yes, all those things are true.
And we're not perfect because of who?
God.
No.
I mean, no, wait a minute.
We're not perfect because of Satan.
No. I mean, it depends who you want to blame. So we could blame our original parents. We could blame...
No.
Well,
No.
But look at this. Satan cannot do one thing without God's permission. So I go back to say God had something to do with that.
Well,
It can't happen otherwise.
God created Lucifer, right? And he was one of the big angels. And he decided he didn't want to follow God. And so God tossed him out of heaven. And Lucifer is the foundation for everything that isn't God.
Yes, but did Satan, Lucifer, have free will?
He did.
Okay. Well, so if he has free will, and then you get into predestination, you get into, did God know what he was going to do ahead of time?
Yes, Satan did have.
So
free
maybe
will.
God didn't
maybe
cause
I didn't say that
evil, but he did allow it.
He allowed.
That's very theological, but truly it's foundational. Because if you truly believe that God is all-knowing, and if you truly believe that he uses bad for good, this scenario that he set up, I mean, he could just not have evil at all, and we'd be on a merry way all the way through life. So therefore, there's a purpose in all of this. He uses evil. He uses what happens in our lives to help us along in ways we don't understand. But I do understand what you're trying to do. I'm going to try to help give you a rope here to pull yourself out. But you're basically trying to say, okay, if somebody's acting mentally ill, like he's out there shooting all these people or whatever, could he just be plain evil, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, the words are interchangeable sometimes, which isn't necessarily the same. No, I agree. But this shooting just recently, in the Catholic school, is he mentally ill or evil? Who knows?
Well, but we do know.
We know by his actions, very much so.
Yeah, and we know by his writing and his manifesto and all that.
Right.
And he is not of God.
I would say that you would judge that person as being evil, wouldn't you?
Well, I would say that he has sinful nature because God would never shoot children. Well, and God would never plan to shoot children.
You can't keep going back to sinful nature. That's a lousy foundation because I have sinful nature. We all have sinful nature. So we all have that. So it's just whether he goes a lot further. I mean, sinful nature, we gravitate to it automatically. If we don't do anything, we're going to be there. I'll guarantee you.
I know.
We have to fight. He didn't fight. He fought. He gave in. He said, "Hey, I'm not going to do your will. I know better." He had to, right?
Who, Satan?
Oh, I'm talking about the shooter.
Oh, the shooter. Okay.
Satan the same way. He knew he had all power and everything. He didn't care. He still wanted to run his own show, and he's going to challenge it. And he's so arrogant. Again, sin of pride. He thought, well, I could beat my maker. It's.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Good question.
Okay, I can answer it.
Well, what would be the answer?
Sinful nature.
That's interesting. I would say
God does not make something horrible happen to somebody. He steps in and helps us fix it, heal from it, forgive from it, use his word, the Bible, to comfort us.
But I don't think everything that happens is due to our sinful nature. I don't think an earthquake happens because of our sinful nature. I think because of our sinful nature, we look for answers and God provides answers. Okay.
Do you think before Eve ate the apple, we had earthquakes?
Quite frankly, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you no.
That's
The
certainly
world God created was perfect. And because of Satan, we have sinful nature. And if it's not of God, then it's of him. And it's not us, it's him. Flip Wilson had it right. The devil made him do it because he wouldn't have done it if the devil didn't exist.
Well, you kind of left Mother Nature out of this. Now, maybe Mother Nature is just a thing of fantasy, but nevertheless.
Oh, no.
So let's say that there is such a thing as Mother Nature. In other words, God gets this world spinning and he says, here, now, here's the parameters, Well, if that be the case, some of these natural occurrences, we can't say the dinosaurs all died because they took up smoking. There's got to be other solutions. We can't say the dinosaurs all died because they took up smoking. There's got to be other solutions to that, other answers to that. With the Indians that tobacco is even cultivated, so we can't blame that. So the point is, we could. It's an easy way to say it. It's an easy catch-all to say, yeah, Satan did it and everything. No, I think it's partly. Now, can we influence that? Can we make choices that hurt us? Can other people make choices that hurt us? Yes. And our job is to go to God. Now, I'll give you an example. These clowns. And I say clowns. Obama's speaker before, she comes out and says, what are these people praying for? You praying, how silly. Because look, they're in the pews and they got shot, right? And so prayer isn't good. Well, that's what Satan wants. Satan wants us to give up on God and give up on ourselves. I feel sorry for that kind of person because she's looking, she has no hope. That's what she's saying. She thinks getting rid of assault weapons alone is going to cure it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, attributing everything to us, nothing to God. You can't do that. So my way of looking at it in terms of evil, you can look at a person and you say, well, that person making fun of all these Christians, is that mental illness? No, that's evil. That's an absence of goodness, an absence of hope, right?
Correct.
So can we say this person suffers mental illness? I don't think so. I think she's just plain evil. For example,
Okay.
there are times that they do coexist or could. We don't know for sure, but we do know that they do operate distinctly separate, without question. There are evil people that do evil things that know exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it, and doing it anyway. And with the idea that it's going to hurt somebody. In fact, that's the intent.
Steve Aerts is my co-host today, and we're talking about we're talking about atheism, and we got on this trail last week, and Steve wrote a really good article, and it's on my Facebook page. I just posted it about an hour or so ago. Bad things happen to good people because of sinful nature. If there wasn't sinful nature, then we'd all be perfect, as God created us to be. And we're not responsible for that.
Well, we'd be in heaven then, which is, that's the only problem with that whole supposition.
Yeah, but he created Earth. All Eve had to do was not eat the apple or whatever it was off the tree of knowledge and good.
If God wanted it to be different, he would have made it a lemon. Eve would have bitten into it, spit it out, would never have offered to Adam. Adam would have noticed it right away. So it was intentional. He could have picked something a lot worse, or maybe something better for that matter, but it's not that simple. It just isn't.
But Steve, I think it is that simple. It's first grade level logic. God created this world and us to be perfect. Satan wanted to take over the world, and God says, not my world. You're not coming up here. And so Satan gave us sinful nature.
No, I don't.
God gave us choice.
He gave us free will.
Well, okay.
And so that's what choice is about.
Okay.
You can't have it without free will. You do make choices, but you got to have free will first. Otherwise, you're predestined to do whatever you're going to do.
But do we always choose to do evil?
No,
Right. Who
gosh,
chooses it?
the person.
Satan.
No, us. Otherwise, we
No.
wouldn't have free will. If you're going to give Satan, I'm not going to bend over and give it to Satan. I'm not going to say you're controlling my life. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be trying to give up hope. I'm not going to try to be fearful of him. I'm going to be in reverence to the Lord and try to do his things. But I tell you what, I am not going to yield to him. If I make a mistake, if I say something wrong, if I do something wrong, it's on me. It's on me. I confess. Satan's not going to confess.
Okay, I agree with you on that, and maybe I'm not doing a good job of explaining to it. We are responsible. I said a minute ago we're not responsible. That was an incorrect statement. We are responsible for our actions because Satan gave us sinful nature. Here, let me put it this way. If my biological mother had not had relations with my biological father, I wouldn't be here.
Let's go back and just
Well,
say,
hold on, but
okay.
do you agree with that?
I'm following your logic, yes.
Okay, so the beginning and the deal that we have to deal with evil is it's not of God. We wouldn't have sinful nature if Satan had not entered into our world.
Well, I think maybe to make this a little simple, I think I see what might be happening. We got to go back to Adam and Eve, whether it's a story literally true, doesn't matter. Early on, man was tempted by Satan and yielded to that temptation. And from that point on, there was a separation between man and God in terms of what that was at that time. That's where the sinful nature comes in. I think where it might be confusing, Mac, even myself, I probably be acting this way, is I'm thinking of every person talk about sinful nature. Sinful nature came from the choice back then that was made by our original parents, okay? That's where that was embedded, period. From that point on, that's why there's baptism and such, to eradicate that original sin. Not that we aren't still imperfect, but it's our way to get back into God's graces.
Can we spend 24 hours without sinning?
Oh, I know you can't, and I know I can't.
Okay.
I'm not sure about everybody else.
Okay.
I know you well enough that give me 10 minutes, I bet I can catch you, and you
Yeah.
give me about 5.
Yeah.
And, I mean, gosh, and the thing is, guys, people listening, the more you talk about how good you are, the more you're sinning. I mean, the ego, the pride thing will catch you. You just tell everybody how perfect you are. Just keep doing that, and pretty soon you're going to fall flat in your face, and somebody's going to point it out, or you're going to see it yourself. But it's just we are constantly being, God, Satan. I would say to Mac, and I would totally agree on this, which is probably the only thing today we'll agree on, is that Satan never sleeps. Okay.
Right. Satan's outside that door right there, our studio door, doing push-ups, waiting for us to walk out of here.
Oh, he's right next to you. He's not.
No.
He's on your shoulder. He's ready to go, man. He's not going to do that. But at the same time, we can't be so worried to think, is he everywhere? He isn't Jesus. He isn't God. He's not everywhere. That's one fallacy. He isn't quite that powerful. We give him more credit than he deserves. Now, he deserves every horn he has on his head. He's earned every one of them by things he's done. No, I'm not saying that. He's earned everything he's got. And some of these pictures you think, well, is he really that ugly? Well, he's going to make he's going to make us look good. He's going to make our sin look good to us, okay? Everything he tempts us will be made look good. But when you see something, if you take goodness out of a person or out of an entity in a spirit, it's going to become an ugly thing just by the nature of what you got left.
You just said something very important. Everything that we do comes from sinful nature. If it doesn't come from God, it comes from sinful nature.
Yes, because of what our original parents did. Yes.
And here's another example I have, and you know what the definition in my life is humble. It's teachable. Right now, I'm learning things from you. I don't ever want to be, I don't know enough about anything. I used to think I knew everything.
Well, I have a couple teenage kids I'm raising, and I told them enjoy the time. It's the only time in your life you will know everything. And as they get older, the parents, and you parents know this, the kids, or if you don't yet, you'll find out, but the kids are going to start seeing you being smarter all the time. And my dad's been passed away for quite a few decades, and every day I see him wiser than I knew he was before. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of these things we're so limited in our ability to see things because without our experiences, we don't have any intrinsic wisdom. It's all learned. It's all learned. And a lot of what's learned is by faith. If we have to wait until we understand God, keep this in mind. If you have to wait to understand Him, forget it. It's never going to happen.
Okay, that's a great segue. I believe that we have a hole in our heart that God created for Him. But because of sinful nature, free will, whatever you want to call it, we put alcohol in there. We put, I'm not really who I think I am. I'm a woman instead of being a man. We think it's okay to shoot somebody, to kill them. That does not come from God.
No, that's our sinful nature.
Alcohol.
Yeah. Because it's just about all of our disorders and just about all our tragedies and that we deal with it's man trying to replace God with something else.
Yes.
And they're seeking God in wrong places. They're seeking the wrong things. Power, just for its own sake, that's substituting for God. Materialism, everything, it's substituting for God.
So if someone fills that space that the Holy Spirit is supposed to live in, God present in us, if somebody fills it with something else, isn't that mentally wrong?
Well, it could be mentally wrong, but it's definitely evil. In other words, if you have nothing but that in your inside, you have no room for goodness. Mental illness, in many cases, and this is where it gets tricky, it's not a choice. That's the difference. In other words, what's mentally ill, per se, that would be diagnosed is something that isn't inborn. It isn't something that's chosen. So that's where I think we have to separate the two, that evil is a choice.
No.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So you can spend a day and not do anything evil.
No,
You can live a sinless day.
I didn't say that.
Well, I am. I'm telling you, that's what that means to me.
Well, how do you get that out of that?
You wait to heaven. You invite the Holy Spirit to live within your life, and you do the best you can to treat people the way Jesus wants us to treat them.
Okay, I think we're missing something here. What I'm talking about is that if one is doing evil, totally rejecting God over and over, his whole life is that. That's where he's at in his heart. That is evil.
That's just mental illness.
No, that's evil. Mental illness.
Isn't mental illness evil?
No.
It's not?
Not by its definition. Mental illness is making a choice, or not making a choice. It's inborn. So, for example, if you were to look at, I got a note here I want to refer to. But, like, for example, what would you call anxiety? What would you call mood disorders? What do you call personality disorders? What about psychotic disorders, substance abuse disorders, eating disorders,
Okay, here's my answer.
trauma-related disorders?
Who created them? Did God create all of those?
Anybody's guess.
Well, no, he didn't.
At this point, I don't think that had anything to do with the personal choice of the person.
But, okay.
And you've got to have intent to have sin. You can't have it otherwise. I mean, that you're accountable for. Now, we inherit that sin. That's why we have baptism, ways to deal with that. But from that point on, our choices have consequences, and they have intent. Otherwise, we're not accountable. If we don't have intent, we can't be accountable.
I agree with what you're saying. The road that we're missing in this conversation is what is the what causes mental illness? What causes people to shoot other people and they shouldn't? What causes, and if you don't want to take this topic, I can do it because I believe in it. What causes somebody to be gay? They'll tell you they were born that way. You know what? They were. They were. Because God created them perfect. But they're filling that hole by being gay. And I'm not knocking them. I always tell you, I don't care if you're gay, trans, have an abortion, murder somebody, married 9 times. I don't care. I want to be that reflection of Jesus that those people who most Christians would damn, oh, you didn't born that way, you decided. No, they really didn't.
Well, I do really believe there are people that are crazy that aren't mentally ill. We can define, it depends how you want to slice it, of course, but they did not choose that. They literally don't know what they're doing.
Right. Who chose it?
I think it's an inherent thing that happens. We don't understand that. We don't have an answer to it. You might want to have an answer, but I mean, you're trying to fill a void yourself on that, and I applaud you for trying, but quite frankly, we can't. There are some things we cannot. There is a mystery in lawlessness. There's a mystery in that. Just like there's a mystery in goodness. There's a mystery.
No, it's not a mystery.
Oh, it is. Because there's parts of that we don't understand. And we never will.
We'll never will, or we will in heaven?
Well, I'm talking about here on earth.
Okay.
And to me, a mystery is something that can't be explained, that you don't totally understand.
Okay.
So that's why I use the word mystery.
One of my favorite Mac-isms is number 3, and its coincidence is God's way of revealing himself. So when you say, or I say, well, what a coincidence we got together, Steve. That was really a coincidence. No, it was part of God's plan. Okay? And because we are sinners, we have, I think you've probably done a better job of this than I have, but we've figured out that people have special needs. And I'm not talking about people with mental illness. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about you. We have special needs, and a relationship understands those needs, and we either step away from that person because we're not going to deal with that, or we come and love them, and those are their special needs. They wouldn't have those special needs without Satan.
And I believe, too, that God asks us to love people, but not necessarily their actions, and certainly not their sin. What would you call insanity?
Well, let me ask you this. Who created it?
I don't know. Merriam-Webster has it in their book. But I mean, what insanity means, it implies that they're not responsible for what they're doing. What does that mean to you? And one thing I think the audience recognizes perhaps is we're not very opinionated here. I mean, a lot of these things are very conservatively said. So, so let me read you one thing.
Okay. Then I'm going to tell you where insanity comes from.
An evil person is a mentally, and this is me talking, but I wrote it down in a way that maybe I could, so I could say it right. So an evil person is a mentally sound person who chooses to do evil things. We know this is true because God would not allow a person to suffer the consequences of evil if that person was not of sound mind, freely choosing evil. He is choosing his will in contradiction to God's will.
That was very well said. I agree with that.
Really? How can you agree with that? Because I just made it sound like mental illness and evil are two different things.
Well,
I think I caught you in your own web. I don't want to, because I'm not a spider. But my point is that, well, I guess that wouldn't necessarily apply if you're in the web and me not, but I don't want to take advantage of you being in the web. But I think it's well stated also because I think it's true more than anything. But what it's saying is that, and this is where the mystery comes in, the mystery of evil. The mystery of evil is not being able to understand how somebody that does what they do isn't absolutely crazy. And why is that? I'll tell you why that is. It's because a person that is mentally sound, but not evil, cannot comprehend it. It's so far out of our realm of understanding. If you're living on God's side at all, you just can't imagine doing that. We, meaning you and I, probably less you than me, would have to be crazy to do that. We couldn't understand it in any other realm.
Okay. Maybe we'll just leave this conversation where it's at.
Well, it's a tough conversation.
Well, see, I don't think it is. But I'm not doing a very good job explaining to you the simpleness of sinful nature.
Well,
I'm not doing a very good job.
Well, probably a place that this kind of goes is why, we all have cell phones today. It's an ubiquitous thing. Everybody has a cell phone.
That's a big word.
Yeah, it is. It took me a while to figure out how to spell it. But anyway, why not everybody have their own therapist instead? Why don't we turn our phones in for a therapist? Because then a therapist can help us get better, to bridge that gap of understanding, to accept ourselves better, to always try to improve and not think negatively. And see what I mean? Avoid all these anxious thoughts and depression and all that,
Aren't all those answers in the Bible?
Well, yes, but therapists make it a lot easier to understand. And
Easier than the Bible?
Oh, yes. And it's a two-way street. The Bible can talk to you, but not quite the same way. My point is, why do we have so many therapists? And that's a separate issue. But it's because there's so much distress going on.
It's because of sinful nature.
Yes, I would.
There we go.
There I would go with you on that. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so in my world, there's God and everything else. And everything else God did not create, and it's called sinful nature. And to me, that's just a very 6-year-old way of looking at things. If it's not God, it's evil. And we may choose what evil we partake in, but we can't choose to not have evil. Satan made that sure, and God gave us that space.
Let me read you something I wrote just recently that really, I wasn't planning on this at all. It's very impromptu, but I'm just kind of thinking about something here.
All right.
So this is me. Okay. So as I reflect upon the terms relativism and situational ethics, and by the way, these are man-made terms. They're not God terms, okay? I cringe as I realize how vulnerable I was to the intellectual, cultural, and godless indoctrination of humanism, materialism, modernism, and secularism in my younger years and even in my later years. False teachings can and do imbue everything and they mask what really is. In other words, it makes things look like they're not. This scares and invigorates me to be diligent in discerning the state of the culture so to avoid being duped. And I might say duped anymore. The problem with these terms is that they're defined in such a way that there is no admitting wrongdoing or having the need to ask for forgiveness. This is one slick way to dance around faith and forgiveness. One who says that nothing is absolute is a fool. So then the saying comes up, who am I to judge? This applies to the heart of a person, but not to the objective truths. So I just interject this right now because when you come...
Well written, by the way.
Well, thank you. It's I think it kind of fills in this interim here of what we're talking about as to good, evil, medically induced or medical illness. There's just a whole lot of stuff that we have invented or have accepted that have contaminated us.
Sinful nature.
Yeah. And that is what that's saying. So if that is saying basically that, and yet, even then, at the very end, we can't judge the heart of that person. I always give. I can judge everything he does, but in the end, only God will judge.
Yeah, I have a person in my life who spent 40 years on the bench, and this person taught me that um, she will have a defense attorney and a prosecuting attorney stand before her. And the defense attorney and the prosecutor have a different opinion on something. Okay. So that judge sits and listens to all that information and then decides, and this is the key phrase, the consequence. You and I cannot, other than your children, we cannot give consequences to people. Only judges can. Now, I know this is very human sounding, but I can't judge a person either because I can't give them the consequence. Does that make sense?
Yes, but that does not mean that we're passive and not discerning of what's happening and not recognizing an action for what it is. Correct?
I think so.
In other words, if somebody shoots
You
somebody,
really talk like an adult, and I don't think that way.
I know, and I'm at least in 8th grade by now. So, and you're in 6th, and so that's a critical stage right there. And so, and it takes a little time. I'll try to help you get there. And,
Thank you.
And then we'll try to get into high school before it's all over.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know who in their right mind would accept us, quite frankly. That's another story. But the point is, we have to recognize that that final decision, we always have to. The reason we can't be the final judge on anything is our ego cannot handle it. These poor judges, I feel for them because they have to make decisions that, and quite frankly, a lot of times they make bad decisions. Sometimes,
We got to make.
I mean,
especially right now in this world.
and sometimes I think they're being fed money and stuff to influence them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that their position isn't important. It just means it can be affected in a negative way. And so be that as it may, but we have to be, I mean, I tell you what, to try to live a Christian life it's rugged. I mean, they always refer to the rugged cross. It's rugged. It's not easy.
Oh,
Not that you can't be happy. You want to be happy. I mean, Jesus created wine, for the feast. I mean, he wants us to be happy. So that isn't the issue. But we just have to really constantly work at it.
yes, I can agree with that. I see Christianity a little different. And I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else. Jesus came into my life 16 years ago because I did not know the difference between right and wrong. I created in my circle of people right and wrong. And what Jesus came to me and said, Mac, I'm going to teach you the difference between right and almost right. Mac, you're not in charge of right and wrong. Okay, you can think a different way, but once you put a consequence on that person, I'm out of bounds. I don't have any right to judge that person who shot those kids up in Minneapolis. His actions were horrible. They came from an evil source. They were not from God. And yet, where are those children that were tragically murdered? Where are they right now? They're in God's arms. When a baby dies, it's tragic for us. But that baby's in God's arms. You may not agree or disagree on this, but do you know, it's a trick question. What's the thing that Satan hates the worst? He hates abortion. Because that is a soul he can never get his arms on.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah. That is a soul that God brings home to where that baby will live forever perfectly. Now, I'm not saying abortion's good, because it's not.
I don't know, pro-lifers would like to hear that, but it's an interesting thought.
I'm adopted. My biological mother, and I have a wonderful relationship with her. She told me once that if I was conceived in 1958, if Roe versus Wade had been legal in 1958, she would have aborted me. Now, hearing that, my wife, for instance, she really doesn't like me to say that. She thinks it's wrong that my biological mother said that to me. But that's how I value life so much, because it is based on choices. And any choice that God wouldn't choose, Satan gave us. That's my 6-year-old theology in my head. If it's not of God, it's of Satan.
Well, that certainly makes sense to, do that because it separates things. Remember that there's a show not long ago called 50 Shades of Grey. The the actual plot, I didn't watch a lot of it because it wasn't really that my cup of tea, but I was curious what the name was about. And in a sense, 50 Shades of Grey is what we use to hide behind things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's
absolutely.
It's really sad because really things are black and white. I tell you what, now I was a Christian all my life, and people talk about when God knocked on their door and all this stuff, and I can't really relate to that. I'm more like the guy that, okay, I got baptized and I'm put in the sandbox, and this is sandbox, a Christian sandbox. But it took me a long time in my life to learn how to play with these toys and to play with others. So that was my kind of how I look at it. I got better and better at it, but still would fail on doing things right. I mean, that's human nature. But the point is that in the process of going through life, and as we see more of it, we tend to make more complicated than it is.
Yes.
And we
that's what we've been doing for 46 minutes.
Yeah, what you guys should really write in and say, look, guys, quit thinking so much and start doing more. You know what I mean? I mean, think less, do more, which is not a bad logo to go for in Christianity sometimes.
Steve Aerts is my co-host today. My name is Mac McKoy, and you're listening to The View from a Pew. There is a YouTube page that we have, and always remember it's The View from a Pew. The reason I say that way is because there's about half a dozen of us that use kind of that phrase for our ministries. And so I chose The View from a Pew because nobody else has that. It's kind of a URL thing, internet, whatever.
Sure.
Let me wrap up this conversation, at least for today, with something rather important. I had and I don't like the word step, but I had a stepdaughter who got in trouble, got put in jail, called her mother, and said, "Mom, bail me out. This is horrible." And guess what Mom said? "No, you just sit there and think about it, and I'll bail you out tomorrow." That night, that 18-year-old girl was murdered in jail, Clark County. That woman, Jill, never got over that. And she would say, "Mac, why did God take my Abby? Why did God take my Abby?" And one day, and this isn't something I thought of my own, this is a Holy Spirit thing. What I reacted with is God didn't take her. He saved her. He rescued her. He knew what was happening. He knew where this was going, and he wanted to bring Abby home. Unfortunately, that did not bode very well. The woman continued to take responsibility for her death, and 13 months later, the mother took her own life.
Wow, what a sad story.
And these were professional people. This was upper middle class. But God doesn't take anybody anywhere. He rescues them. He brings them home.
That's a healthy attitude, because we all lose loved ones, and they could be 103 or 94 or 86 or any age. And what do people always say? "Oh, he's already that old." You hear that a lot. Well, that has nothing to do with how you feel at the time, right? But the idea of rescuing is very good because, a lot of people are suffering and they're rescued. And from that,
Well, if we believe in the relationship of he's my father, okay, and he wants the best for me, the best thing he can give me is a home for eternity with him.
Well, Mac, as we sum up this today, I think I hope somebody rescues us from this one because we're.
I believe. I believe, and I've had this belief my whole life, even before Jesus was the center of my life. And it's kind of a radio thing. Somebody out there got what they needed from this program today. Not 1 million people, not 10 million people, maybe it was just one. But to that one person, praise God that he brought you to listen to or watch this show, and he filled that space in your body that sits empty so often. He filled it with the Holy Spirit, and that's his presence within us.
Amen.
Nice to have you here.
Likewise.
Let's do this every week. All right. Anyway, we're going to get out of this thing today, and I really appreciate it. If it confused you, go back and listen to it again, and if you're still confused, then you're probably normal.
Yeah, because we don't know what we just said.
I want to say thanks to DivineTruthChristian.com. That's our worldwide sponsor. And thank you for listening to The View from a Pew.